We're going to make some loud and filthy guitar noises with the new Heatseeker from Crazy Tube Circuits today. This is a 2-in-1 amp in a box and booster enhancer that can be used together or independently. The drive side has 3 different Marshall style circuits in it. You've got a JTM 45, a 1959 Super Lead, and a JMP 2203 style drive circuit. There's also this wall of sound switch on here, which you can use when you're running this direct with impulse responses. And then you've got a recreation of the Schaefer Vega Diversity Wireless System preamp. Let's just pull up for a second because that sounds kind of weird. This isn't a wireless itself. This is a booster and enhancer, but it's based on an old wireless unit that was used by artists like Van Halen, AC/DC, and Kiss. And some of those artists found that the coloration that wireless actually provided to your guitar signal was quite desirable in the recording studio. Angus Young from AC/DC is probably the best known example now. So I really like that they've chosen to combine these two things in here. Obviously, we're going to hear a bunch of AC/DC inspired rock sounds, but I will play it with both a Les Paul and a Strat. We'll hear it into a clean amp and we'll hear it direct into some IRs and really get into the nitty gritty with this. So let's have a listen to what the Heatseeker has to offer. Let's get started with the Heatseeker into a clean amp. I've got this Les Paul Custom going into the Heatseeker and into the clean channel of my Soldano X88 IR. I want to start out by showing you what the Enhance can do to just a straightforward clean amp. Then we will hear the Marshall inner box side of the Heatseeker. So I'm on the middle selector here, both pickups on. This is the clean sound. Come back and revisit that. I already like that quite a lot. Let's hear the amp side of the Heatseeker. So you've got a 3-way switch to select between a JTM 45 style circuit, a 1959 Super Lead or Plexi circuit, and then a 2203 circuit. We'll start on the JTM side over here. Then there's also this wall of sound switch. Running it into a clean amp, I feel like you don't need that, but we will hear this straight into some IRs direct in a little bit, and I feel like that switch really brings things to life. So let's go back to the neck pickup. We'll hear everything bypassed, then I'll kick in the JTM 45 side and maybe give it a little bit of an enhance. That's just a great sounding Marshall in a box style circuit right there. There are two other options, so we'll hear those, but what I kind of gravitate towards with this is having the mid-range and the treble around 1 o'clock, having the bass somewhere around 10 or 11 o'clock into a clean around probably the presence around 11, and then just ride the volume. I've got the master set around noon on here, which I feel like is pretty appropriate running it into a clean amp. There's plenty of headroom on there though if you do want to use this direct. Again, we will get onto that. Let's just hear the difference between the JTM and the Plexi style circuit now. I'll take the enhancer out of this, but you could hear in there it was really adding just a nice touch, like just a little bit. It's changing the feel up and it's just making everything sound a little clearer. Way more aggressive than the JTM 45 side, and you can hit it with the enhancer side as a boost on there to get even more gain out of it. Let's go over to the 2203 style circuit on here. So what I find with this is the master is a lot more sensitive on there. So I've cranked up the volume, which is just a gain control on here. You can see the settings on here. I've got plenty of mids and bass on there. The treble's at around noon. We'll set the enhancer up basically to just kick it over the edge to get started. And then I'll just play around with the position of this master control because it's going to saturate the front end of this clean out. effect that master has on there, it gets louder up to a certain point, but once it hits around like 10, 11 o'clock, it just starts to saturate and sag out, which, you know, a real Marshall amp would do. I think that's really cool on there. I think out of all of those, that 1959 is probably my favorite mode, but having the 3 distinctly different characters in there is really cool. Let's hear each of them with a Strat now. What I really liked there was switching over to the Strat didn't totally wreck the tone that I had set up. It just sounded more like I'd plugged a Strat into an amp rather than some distortion pedals you really need to dial in completely differently on there. I like that the core tone and character was still there. I was just playing a different guitar. Also, you notice that the enhance side over there interacted with this guitar a little bit differently. Much lower output pickups going into the front of that. So cranking that up definitely helps. What I want to do now is just take this straight into my audio interface where I have loaded up an IR of a greenback cab. I want to show you this wall of sound feature in here. So at the moment, I'm coming straight out of the pedal through the IR. As before, there's just a little bit of reverb added in post. Then I'm going to kick in this wall of sound function on here, which basically to me kind of sounds like a power amp simulation or maybe impedance simulation, something like that, where if you wanted to run this into a real amp, obviously you've got the power section of the amp and the impedance interaction with the speaker. If you just take a pedal and run it through an IR, there's none of that reactive property in there. So to me, that's what it sounds like this is doing. Let's just hear it again on the Strat. I'm on the JTM side, and then I'm going to kick in the wall of sound switch. just heard it on the super lead setting there. One thing that I like about this, and as you just heard there, is this whole setup is really touch sensitive. Again, it's quite amp-like. If I play really softly on there, the amp kind of behaves itself a little bit more. It sounds sweeter and cleaner, but then when I dig in, especially on this 1959 setting with the wall of sound switch up and with the booster and enhancer on, it gets really saggy and sticky sounding. One last thing before we go, I'm actually just gonna run this just to use the boost and enhance side. I'm really curious how this would go in front of a digital modeler, just to change up the input dynamics going into it. So we're gonna hear something completely different. I'm gonna fire up my Fractal FM9 and just use my main live preset in there. Let's have a listen to what just this side does. All right, here's some giant chungus on the bridge pickup. We'll hear it with the booster and enhancer bypass, and you'll notice that I'm actually just going out of the send. One really cool thing is you can use these two pedals straight into one another, or you could place an entire signal chain between them. In this case, I'm just coming out of the send, so that I'm only using this part of the pedal. Again, we're gonna hear it bypass and then kick it in. This makes a really cool combination with the neck pickup on this guitar. They absolutely have to release that side of the pedal as a standalone tiny stomp box, because I love what that is doing to the guitar sound right there. I'm going to pull up stumps for now. This is the Heatseeker by Crazy Tube Circuits. Big shout out to Christos and the team at Crazy Tube Circuits for sending this one out to me. They've been doing some amazing work. They make so many of my favorite modern effects pedals, and when they did the high watt and fuzz combo, I was really hoping they would do something Marshall based, and the fact that you've got 3 different Marshall flavors along with the Vega style circuit in there for your AC/DC style thing. We heard that it can do so much more than AC/DC in there. I'll put more information in the video description. If you like what I'm doing on the channel, links to my music and my Patreon in the video description. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.